What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for turning to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. I'm so glad to have you here. My name is Stephen Thompson, coming to you live from the UPMC Bruni Sports Complex on the south side of Pittsburgh following day 3 of training camp for the Pitt Panthers. It was a full day for Pitt. They were practicing in shoulder pads for the first time after spending the past 2 days in what Pat Narduzzi referred to as their spider pads, just a little lighter shoulders, but they were able to hit a little bit today. We got to see them do that during some team and some individual drills, so it was an exciting day out here, kind of things feeling like they're starting to get real. But, without giving away too much, this definitely looked like a team that was still in day 3 of total team practices. They got to work on the finer details and mechanics and techniques. The small media window for media viewing that we got to see looked a little disjointed. We saw them take some team reps. There were a lot of veterans pointing guys around, trying to get them to the right spots, and a lot of coaching too. I would say a little bit of some yelling. Frank Signetti and Pat Narduzzi wanted guys in order. Guys still kind of need to learn the offense a little bit. That's pretty clear, but that's day 3. That's day 3. That's guys in a new system. There are a ton of new faces in addition to the guys that are returning. You like to see guys teaching, and you expect guys to need to learn a little bit as this process is still in its early stages. But that's expected given how early in the calendar we are. But even with the execution maybe lacking a little bit, there were some real standouts from day 3 here at the UPMC Bruni Sports Complex, day 3 of Pitt training camp. First one I want to point out is Zion Fowler-El, a freshman wide receiver from New Jersey, wearing number 23 for the Panthers this season. Both times that we've talked to Pat Narduzzi since training camp has started, Fowler has come up as a guy that Pat Narduzzi is really excited about. He was not a mid-year enrollee. He arrived this summer after finishing up his high school career, so he was, in theory, a little bit behind the 8 ball. He didn't have as much time to learn the playbook as guys like Lamar Seymour or Israel Polk, 2 other freshman wide receivers who came in the middle of the year, or even Dejon Reynolds, a transfer from Florida who has some experience, but not in this system specifically. So he is still impressed. Pat Narduzzi on both of these days. Watching him, he's a smooth athlete, good route runner, kind of twitchy. I'd like to see, if he has that real top end straight line speed. We haven't really gotten a chance to see that yet, and see his hands get challenged. Maybe some team drills, see him go one-on-one against maybe some of these other defensive backs. But as for right now, it looks like the Panthers are at the beginning of a real special player in Zion Fowler-El. He's one of those freshmen. We've talked about it before. Those 4 freshmen between him, Fowler-El, and Polk, Lamar Seymour, and then Kenny Johnson, another summer enrollee, along with Fowler, in that freshman class who are going to compete right away for playing time at receiver. The Panthers have an open spot after Jared Wayne left the NFL. Bub Means and Kanata Mumfield are back, but outside of that, not a whole lot is super sure for them at wide receiver. And Fowler looks like, through these 3 days, you got to take that caveat with it, especially when guys aren't in full pads yet. But he's looked like a guy that they are really impressed with. And talking to coaches, this week about, freshmen, about true freshmen in particular, and guys who could play right away as true freshmen, it really all comes down to the playbook. Fowler looks like he's got all the physical skills, and they absolutely won't put a guy out there who isn't ready physically to take on the demands of big-time college football. But Fowler looks ready for that. It all will come down to whether or not he knows the playbook well enough so that the coaches can trust him to do his job every time he steps out there onto the field. And that might be a process. I don't think they've done a whole lot of team drills just yet. They've done some individual stuff. We saw a little bit of some team offense today, but wasn't a lot of passing either. It really just comes down to how quickly Zion or any of these freshmen, or even Reynolds or any of these new guys will be able to pick up the playbook in the second year of Frank Signetti's offense, and where they kind of go from there, and how ready they are and how quickly they are ready. There's some other veterans he's contending with too. There's Addison Copeland, Chanan Bwako, and Jake McConaughey, who's a walk-on. So Fowler's got some stiff competition, but it is significant that Pat Narduzzi made sure to single him out not once but twice. He had only seen him 3 days, but this guy is already impressing. And I think among those 4 freshman receivers between Polk, Johnson, Seymour, and Fowler was, I guess, generally considered maybe the biggest question mark, or the guy who's going the most underrated. He wasn't the highest rated recruit of that group, and wasn't here for spring ball, so you didn't get a great look at him at all. So, he's kind of flown under the radar, but so far through practice, when the team's been fully together and when he's been able to put the pads on a little bit and show what he can really do in front of his new coaches, he's really impressed, and that's certainly notable. Another player that we've heard a lot about and heard a lot from is Brandon George, a linebacker, redshirt senior, was hurt a lot last year. I believe he missed the season opener against West Virginia, played the next 3 weeks, and then suffered another injury later in the calendar, kind of before ACC play could really start. And this is a guy who has a ton of energy, really positive, and a guy who's stuck with Pitt for a long time. So you're excited to see him back. He's really excited to be back. This is a guy who's ducking his head into his teammates' interviews. You can hear him on the field. He's real loud. He's trying to be a vocal leader. And you also, hearing from his coaches, it's not just the positivity and the mental reps and the experience in the system, but this guy is much better physically than he has been for the past 4 years that he's been at Pitt. He's slimmed down. He's 15 pounds lighter, down from about 260 to 245. So he's, more ready to be adaptive and to change around what position he might play. That's according to his position coach, Ryan Manelek. He loves to have guys who can cross-train and play different positions, whether it's Mike, Money, or Star. George, I think, fits a little better as a middle linebacker, that Mike linebacker, but this is also a guy that was considering a switch to the defensive line at certain points. He was 260 pounds, and Pat Narduzzi said they might have liked him as an edge rusher or even a defensive tackle, but that's changed very quickly over the summer after he dropped those 15 pounds. And he's not just slimmer and able to move better, but it's going to help him prevent injuries. It's going to help him be more versatile. So, Narduzzi said it doesn't appear right away that he lost a ton of weight when you just look at him. On the field, he doesn't appear like he's 15 pounds lighter, but once you start seeing him move, he flies around. He's just moving completely different, and that's really notable. And it's important for George, who I think is extremely eager to play and eager to get on the field after such a rough year last year where he missed 8 games, was able to come back by the bowl game, but still, he's just getting his feet wet right again after missing more than 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks of the regular season, but then an additional month of bowl practices. So it was a long time for him since he's been on the field before. And, he really feels like he's getting an opportunity now because there is a massive, massive hole at middle linebacker with Savassi Dennis off to the NFL. The Panthers are looking for some experience, some guys who can hit, some guys who can make calls from the middle of that defense. That makes George a really prime candidate to play there because he has the experience in the system. He's a veteran guy. And of course, he's also loud. He's a pretty good communicator. He's going to let you know how he feels. And then, of course, guys who play in the middle, they got to be able to hit. Brandon George can certainly do that. He says he has not lost any of that power with that weight. Just because he can move better does not mean he will not hit as hard. And I love this quote from Pat Narduzzi. He kind of closed his answer to the questions about Brandon George with this. He said, "You're not going to see the same Brandon George that you've seen before. This is a completely different player, a guy with a completely different attitude and a completely different outlook on this season." I'm sure he was excited last year, but this is kind of the last ride, and this is where he can really make his name and cement his legacy at Pitt. He's really eager to do that. So he'll be in that competition with Shane Simon, and Bengal Kamara, and Solomon DeShields. There's kind of a 4-man rotation there. All those guys I would expect to play, but you're battling for starting snaps and prime playing time. Brandon George is certainly going to be in the mix, and he's going to be a guy that you will see early and often this year. So we're excited to see where he goes for the rest of camp. That's all we got. I'm gonna head out of here from the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. Close it out on day 3 of training camp for the Pitt Panthers. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers for interviews, highlights, and more original content like this. We will be back on Monday. That'll be day 6, I believe, practice 6 of training camp for the Pitt Panthers. We'll come back with another live practice report from the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. Also, make sure to check out our reporting straight from camp as well at si.com/college/Pittsburgh. It's also insidethepanthers.com. With that, we're headed out of here. Thanks for tuning in.